Well, I was just watching Dan Bongino and some guy speaking about the border. See, they made, and that's on Fox News. And then the Fox News and the CNN stands for the like democracy, and and the Democrats. And then the Republicans stand for democracy and the Republicans. And they're both leaving out the Republic. And when they speak for it, it is through the influences, that breaching method, our founders left with complete possession of all locations, areas, and states, quality of premises treatments, quality of sequence treatments, quality of finite, active, progressive, and identity treatments, where there was an identity theft slash fraud method, where the breaching method understood that and how. Each complete identity, even the entire species identity of volume at once, when it, where, and how it is positive and also positive onto itself, that is where and how. Its semi-nature relationship to the identity of simultaneous nature that is everywhere at once, individually grouped and together. This is the invisible but discernible in demonstration to us, even down to Earth's difference from the rest of space nature. This is where we could know how and why there are. In other words, consciousness could discern where and how there's a concentrated value here. We have 365 days in a year. See, but we're no longer going by the concentrated value system here. We're not appreciating it where other systems in nature keeps demonstrating that. Therefore, Leith of Hadith, forced space nature transfer. But we're not perceiving that per the phenomenon of the method to the method of the archetypal breaching method, the archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will, a predicate acts delivery system method that didn't just have remote control over the three branches of government, intercolonies, which is locations, areas, and states, is before them, but those are words. That's science. Location, areas, this is the science of the ancient republic for which we stand. Still criminally foreign influence, to being and having been employed to roles as a tool for human fact treatment nature, slavery, and torture method. The torture is on top of the slavery, and identity theft slash fraud method, and that is especially differentially important. And how and why things can be especially differentially important, for example, are also in demonstration of the identity of the volume science. That is the identity of the simultaneous nature that revealed us individual group together. When we are positive, also positive unto itself everywhere at once, it is in that sequence we are valued for as a simultaneous nature. When we're evaluating, as ourselves, even if we're doing it all together, but we're doing it abridged, it is putting the name of the country or the name of the group as importance over the individual finite voice. Free speech. CT is peach. CT is cherry tree, not oak nor peach. It must be that our founding parents, even if George Washington did more than our founding parents forced all the other founding parents into collusion because it was against the law to try to fight against what was your slavery. The law is not a physical thing, and the nature of the law has not been spoken correctly for since ancient times. This just reminds. And so only it's speaking through properly through counters that were made and kept incapable of being complete. So that's the only truth part of it. Is that they have cases separated. They have left out how and why the overt criminal enterprises, plural, and the private ones, and people associated with body dumping spots, people next to it, because where the investigation is going to be through time. Control the mind. They had complete. They knew that the colonists would have to say things that are true and try to, like, you need police, you need courts, you need politicians, you need the three branches of government. See, but they employed all those things. Vaccines. This is a method against each age of factory nature, where they knew how and why a factory nature works. Well, we have means to look at all the space they walk through, all the space like on the sides of highways. And in other words, we can put temporary spots better than apartments now. People say, "Oh, we don't agree that way." No, there are people that will agree to a system. In other words, it's like they'll save us so much money, and everyone will be happier, and we'll make like a hybrid agency, and all the countries could pay them. We could agree. In other words, and we're going to work. We're going to force evolution science. In other words, and we don't leave out the ground. See, the ground's tactically denatured. They built it before our founding parents were born. All these other countries were here, and there and everywhere was already blaming other things, others themselves, for the real cause of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature itself, as our volume, but not as our volume the way we are. We're a bridge from its science. What's really going to cause, ancients couldn't believe we would forget what's really, to know what really is going to cause evolution's fruits and gifts, means out of nowhere. For example, real proper care for the value of sequence true. Like with prayer contemplation, trying to value it, because even the slightest detail not off key. Finite, the order of the finite. The active, so those are three. The progressive, like what's the progressive value of New York City? Of people stacking the way they have it with cities, with suburbs, let alone cities. Throughout, this is only made fathomable by what was here since before our founding parents, with the slavery of our founding parents. Our founding parents wanted us to understand that, and how. They didn't have free speech, and they had speech that was prescribed to them. And though they were worse than just punished. So everyone was punished and tortured sickly distinctly. And effectively, it was knowingly to keep how sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. To keep actually what was remotely using that. You know, people become, they're separated from the education of the Native Americans. That was most practical to convey. Relative to other opinions and convictions. And relative to actions, you know, what's your research when people say that? The sciences, each of them, they speak about, and they tell people about, oh, this is how we have to deal with this. This is how we like to deal with evidence or research. You know? So we can see legitimate. See, but that's just the process of them teaching it. They're forcing that process, which is abridged. Because, for example, they go for departments and things like that. the campuses are different, A through Z, interlocations, area states, internations, shared here and there, since before our founding parents were born. Now they have to share students here and there. Have to have someone to punish if something goes bad. This was complete possession of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, in the branches of government. Kept and keeps them needing to hide roles with a vertical and horizontal database organized. Method. Predicate Acts delivery system method that even they never fathomed. It was here with sophistication before our founding parents were even born. So each must warn. This is covering its tracks historically since semi-ancient times. It's just reminding. It is not complicated. That's how it was a vertical and horizontal database organized crime method. Before it was that, while it is being that, and beyond it worse, beyond it also, another way, it was an identity to ground location method. So they had the crazy laws, slavery against everyone. Now they put black and white. China was here, Russia was here, they're white. So they had roles. But also with black agencies. So that's the most important part. They leave out how all these different minority of agencies members, people speaking for the law, that were incapable of it because the breaching method was sophistication there before their founding parents were born. How could it, there are proofs that yin yang and the alpha and omega have to be taught together. And they were revealed to be taught together. Even though that's more practical. Anyway. Alpha and omega, we don't know. It's invisible but still discernible. We don't know if we're temporary positive that is also lasting positive. There's also, in other words, there are criminal insidious natures of truths that can be told and used as lies. But we have prevented originally and still. We have been prevented the quality of fact treatment nature to demonstrate such. People, oh, what's your research? You try to report things, originally and still. The overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, and the interbranch, and killers, and individuals, groups together, people tied to locations next to the body dumping spots. All those people are kept needing to hide sequences together. Uses of them. Uses of everyone's premises treatment. They go into courts, people. They tell them, oh, just say this or this. They're stacking more and more fabricated audio and video. Our countries and others being and having been done on into databases. And they speak little insidious things through the people on and off the locations and on and off campuses. And further intersciences individually grouped and together. Because it's consciously made and kept. People need to pretend they're stupid when people use short words correctly. And then they protract that. And so they get people to value exception nature set up for them, like nature, like why people call other people names online. They're getting into people's business. They're getting into complex things. In other words, they're getting into criminal insidiousness as it. So we have to deal with how that was all used remotely originally and still. That knew that and how. Everyone would have to be value insidious natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments, blame the other things others themselves, increasing at the moments where people would have to respond to the questions and to the awareness of each age of fact nature. The youngest person had and has means to discern this. See, but we have measurement systems, then they're exploiting exceptions, for example, pretending it's about health. But they're all just colleagues of people with their own kids, who are doctors, who are attaching other people's kids and themselves with foreign and domestic mental health care doctors and judges, speaking fake things into records, and with the interbranch, and with their patients and criminals since before they get caught, and with all the different employments with their campuses, locations. They're involved with database racketeering, forging names, switching names because they can't speak with quality of fact checking. So they use punk trick games originally and still, where there are database locations since before computers. So they need everyone speaking through other people, lawyers too, originally and still. They're involved with. You have to deal with the other people involved. And in other words, our courts are kept as victims, but they're kept victim predators, criminally foreign influenced and used remotely down to their sequence shifts, their finite, active, progressive lies. Now, gang thefts and fraud, styles, roles, natures actually recorded. So they need to pretend others, so they're increasingly self-valued roles with what really led to and leads to concentrated areas where there are shootings. People of overt criminal enterprises will explain this. They confess, demonstrate, and record. They have to keep the same secret. With the interbranch, will explain too. They're proud that they are criminally foreign influenced. When it comes down to it, when they're just shocked and awe, so they smile. For example, relative to their uses of news, stealing, identity thefts, and frauds, catching me, others to fake words, fake locations, fake conversations with doctors, little kids, fake locations with a principal child defender. No, there are more medical families involved, personally with various natures of courts and their family members. So then they use tricks like speaking fake things into records. So, Judge Napolitano is the only person I know who could be strong enough not to be scared, and not scared enough, too scared to follow mandated law, because they use wire crime methods, because they replace what is actually recorded over the phones. And this has a whole bunch of other countries and former director of the FBI and his co-defendants and their family members in a 2006 case leading up to that and since, also involved with relevant predicate acts on and off the campuses that were also timed in conjunction with stuff on and off job sites proven but further recorded. There are remote uses of each age of fact treatment nature's correlation / discorrelation and relativity to instances where and how their names are being grouped, used. For example, location, in other words. And the sequences are so relevant to how they're forcing quality of fact treatment nature. They're forcing quality of premises treatment, names treatments. They have the news media involved with parents in the background spreading rumors because they have roles with federal criminals since before they got caught, with all kinds of natures like pension thefts, bookmaking, Shylock and stuff. There are also roles with timed identity thefts and frauds with corners of schools, where they have the same little girl, for example, and little boys that you don't even know, because they know you're not going to know their name, make statements to you And so in the future, if you say you don't know them, they say they know you. They try to make exceptions. So if you mind your own business, you know, confessions is involved with this. This is really where and how, where it went. The correlation slash discorrelation capable of speaking for Native American rights first and simultaneously, then with everything else first, like slavery. In other words, and the torture on top of it. And how do you describe that? You describe the method. It's a predicate acts delivery system method. Now, no matter who wants to deny it, even if it's the best judges and the best attorney general, we need time. Their time treatment's also too fast, too slow. They're getting over on forever nature. Identity. But by identity, for the system that's native pure, that we are. We don't have to be Native American. They're of increasing value to us as proof. No, they're still forced to entertain a relationship, identity of the ground relationship that our name of the country has in systems that are caused to negative value nature progressions, action interests, incapable of causing positive value nature progressions, action interests. They made those industries and jobs and all that. They made positive value nature progressions as exceptions employed to get over on the Constitution on the bridge. It is native pure. It means they're out of nowhere. So we need temporary space locations. And, we need to keep it like, it only feels like, evolution science only feels like games because it's everywhere at once. So if people, that's why, in other words, we're not going to put ourselves, we're not going to entertain the box. That the laws and everything have to do that by making them a hyper agency. Slash IES. I tell past boxings. People are that desperate. They have to walk through countries. And see, there's an order to that. Because there is complete possession when they speak about racism, for example. When they use premises treatments. They can't defend that and afford discernment of how all those countries were entrenched here and there with those sick database relationships. The prelude that came before the suit and tie encounters, so many ways still inclusion. So they have to speak about positive and negative, that the value, tricky natures of it, being and having been self-valued by, in other words, that's what's in a positive value nature progression. Everything will change instantly. Everything will change instantly. We're going to reveal a quality of fact-chip in nature that none of these sides and the arrays of opinions can afford. But that's good. Because if it's led by that identity of simultaneous nature that reveals us the way this is, and we don't leave out the ground distinction. In other words, evolution science doesn't work without the ground or gather round. And they're going to anyway. So we have to, besides, you don't bring up economics and leave out the slavery and torture method that employed that too. You can't tell American history if you're not telling that. You're pretending passions and emotions. You're pretending about other people's. People say, oh, you can't do this. People will get violent. They keep that mentality of the overt criminal enterprises, of the private ones, of that group, quote, group think, unquote, and or that, that group People have to describe these things. Vaccines. People that already came through a method that no one fathomed against everyone. A Precox delivery system method that is completely fact-treatment nature oriented. It was all worse, way worse first. But the method of keeping everyone collusion at each age, self-valued roles, it uses how that was already to all locations insidiously. It made everyone blame other things other than themselves insidiously. It made nature demonstrate that. It made them pretend not to realize, hide that, hurt people, trick, persuade people for other motivations than interest. So, all we have to do is have any one of the nations say, I agree with YouTuber Anthony Wall, or at least to put down the idea, and if it becomes good enough, then we take it. In other words, we can get, I'm not saying build a design cheap, temporary locations that are better than like those cheap apartments that we're going to reveal as unacceptable. They're breaching method, slavery and torture method employed. To stacking people like that in New York City, hundreds of nations at once, and then they want to talk about conflicts and with nuclear weapons, yet they're the only ones with the planes and the boats, but they just want to do business as usual. From a tactically denatured identity, the grounds, identity of relationship to itself, the nature of the system pure, native pure. Vaccines, it teaches things, prepare your souls. See, we have to say, don't fight. There are times when it's positive to say that. But see, originally and still, the courts and the police forms and the politicians are saying, but they're saying it to prevent us from defending ourselves, while simultaneously to further the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, while being them and causing them, and also having them blamed on other things other than themselves while they're making all their naive time treatments, issues treatments. In other words, roles with the wire crime action methods, falsified police reports, database illusions, stacked remote uses of the sciences of each of the campuses individually grouped together, including fire campuses, including with the wire things, including remote uses of investigations. Investigators, they have remote uses of all the campuses inter and intra per a method, uses corners. Same one that has uses of corners of streets with identity thefts and frauds. So we'll examine this. You guys get nervous when we bring names up. These are strangers that brought those names up. All exceptions that appear to be in demonstration of other and really in demonstration of the same thing. Vaccine, so we can get Fox News to help. Fox News judges and any ones with CNN, because their sources are also involved on and off Central Connecticut State University with the Connecticut courts, judges, and their family members, and their personal relationships with roles with predicate acts, with identity thefts, frauds, all that, sequence shifts, falsified police reports roles, names forging and switching roles, all kind of justice racketeering, evidence perception racketeering, all that mentioned about the sciences and the campuses stuff, falsified news attaching me and others to fake words, fake locations, fake conversations with themselves and with others. Those others pretended I had a conversation with strangers I never had a conversation with, and about police equipment. I never had a conversation with police equipment with anybody in my life. surveillance. They pretend I have a conversation about police equipment and surveillance, and as people that were proven. My father proved an NLRB case before that was years ago. He proved it after I got out of high school. But in 2006, there was an ongoing. At the time, my father's death, a part of it was a district court case with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. He was a co-defendant. And he was on the stand as a co-defendant from a Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act, former standing chairperson on that, which transitioned over to that from the Organized Crime Control Act. And this is also relevant to the language of a Joshua Julian. So I'll just use that one name, for example, on Facebook. Recorded on the principal of a child offender's campus. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the themes of the Confederate flag and of black and white. And all exceptions. They're preventing, their roles with identity thefts and frauds originally still. They're used remotely. All of our locations tied to databases. Now, these are the same people, so there are connections between campuses I went to that even the people that worked there and the people involved with this don't understand. So we have to counter what they do over the phones. They pretend not to understand people. Then they replace that with fabricated audio and video transcripts. NBC Connecticut News changed conversations that were over the phone, and after a bunch of different answering machine messages and confession rolls and things were made over, and statements were made over the answer machine. They changed it to a conversation about emails. And for the dialogue in it that they said didn't make sense, they took something I wrote on Facebook and they retyped it and pretended it was an email, again, to replace what was over the phone. These are police forms, plural, involved with the regular police. These are doctors, some of them are police at the same time. They were involved with all kinds of physical delusions, all kinds of medical racketeering and natures of, like wicked Social Security pilfering. Now, these are people that Democrats and Republicans that have constituencies. These are just individuals. They want to go up into a spot where all locations, areas, and states are all groups preventing individual voice. And the voices need to say that. Blame other things on themselves. Or if they'd say it right, just detach everyone to fake words. Keep using time to get over on everyone. Keep using courts that are self-following rules, with this being and having been in their databases, fabricated audio and video. Even totally made up to attach little kids and people to fake locations through time. I just remind you, because what is actually going, Then they pretend it's personal. When you have to use other people's names, they sought you out. So we have to get in other words. And so there are a bunch of different courts and their family members with this. There are a bunch of people that confessed and recorded. When I was in middle school, there were judges. And when I was in high school, there were judges involved with all Weathersfield, and with kids that I didn't know, that were pretending they were just not in normal interactions where they were involved with. So in other words, even younger than that, they have involvements with their confessions where they demonstrate they're recorded criminally foreign influence differentially constantly, and they pretend other. And part of the way they get away with it is by the games they play with race as identity thefts and frauds roles, including the complete remote possession and self-value roles of the only of the two different black families. Recorded, confessed, and demonstrate also involved with remote uses of value progressions where people walk and things like that, and communicate relative to on and off the state judicial branch offices and the locations next to it and the houses next to it and all along Route 3, right through cities. This is where we are, value/value progression. So we still have so the child abuse is, for example, one of the main things that was involved with the other police forms too, was their needs to hide lie progressions. As the people involved with the locations next to the news media too. See, people of each age grow up and they go through programs, and this person's going to be a police officer, this person's going to be a fire person, this person's going to work with the Russians. That's fine. Control your mind here and there. But so we have all kinds of medical racketeering. They've been faking words of people. They've been fabricating audio and video as courts. These are also prisons involved with their patients and killers, and the principal child offender, other medical families involved, and with locations like in Middletown on the water. Repeated a whole bunch of different ones involved with them for some reason. Anna Phil Collo, for example, is also one of the ones by Bob Chase, and with various natures of courts and police forms with the Weathersfield police, like two Mendes reportedly brothers, attaching me to fake communications with one of them on the police department. There's fabricating audio and video transcripts, replacing what's actually recorded, even with the police, because they're caught, so they forge and switch names. They've been fabricating police reports since before the pandemic. Then right before the pandemic, and then over the last 5-6 months, they've been involved with predicate acts, wire crimes, falsified police reports, identity thefts and frauds. As people that were involved with such from backgrounds when I was a kid on campuses, whether people don't have a chance to counter because they're not even seeing the other kids in the campus. They have identity theft fraud method. So it's not complicated. So have to follow mandated law. Why they didn't respond to me? Because they also attached me and my family members, and they do this to everyone, to fake words with each other and about legal cases where they're involved with the federal criminals in relative other cases proven and things like that were disputed and stuff like that, that they were involved with the people before they got caught with the illusions, blaming other things other than themselves for things when people ask, well, why is this person complaining about this or that? They've been lying to their community meeting with their parents. They have some of the sneaky parents in the background telling lies, hiding what I caught them doing. Since before that, what they caught off the campus in Hartford, the principal involved with. And with the news media still. More and more, they've been hiding it in other stories. Needing to hide lies.